Hi, this is Cynthia, and I talk about embodying the goddess and the divine feminine. We're in a time right now where there's a lot of hate and a lot of fear. So what is the thing that we can do the most to start to take our old models, take our conditioning, all of these ways that we've been pushing ourselves up and out of form into these, what I call the transcendence bias, and back into the body? How do we embody ourselves? How do we create community? We do it in the simplest of ways. It's always simple how we do these things. We find each other's voices. We share stories. I share my story, you share your story. There is something about coming together in a community where that sharing, the sharing of art, the sharing of literature, the sharing of color and dance and story and music, that allows us to connect in body and in form. Why? Because the divine feminine is form. She is nature. She is vibration. In the ancient yoga traditions, really in the tantric traditions, the divine feminine is often represented by sound vibration. And as sound vibration, there's 4 primary levels of sound. There's total silence, that kind of like the ground of being. And then you take that ground and you create the next level up, which is intuition. So it's almost like the sound vibration is starting to take shape, and then it becomes a thought or an emotion. So now that shape, it's like the clay of the earth has turned into a pot. And now that pot can start to hold things. It can hold water, it can hold substance. We've baked it. It's becoming a form. And then that 4th level of sound is the physical world, which includes the body. So out of silence, intuition, kind of the shimmering, the oscillating of knowing something, becoming thought and emotion, kind of the deep inner response, and then becoming physical form. And the physical form is like, here, I have this pot and I can share it with you. You can hold it, you can touch it, I can sell it, I can buy it, I can engage with it. These are the 4 levels of oscillation and sound vibration that are named. So how did the goddess come to be put to the side? Because everything we do here is sound vibration. If everything is the physical world that we are engaging with, and by that, I also include thought and emotion, intuition, and stillness, well, it has a history to it. For over 3,000 years, most of our religions have been teaching a model that isn't actually geared toward life. It's geared toward death and dying. A lot of the earliest yoga traditions were created as death and dying practices. For example, in the Vedic and Upanishadic tradition, yoga, to yoke oneself, is really to collect the body at the time of death and then to send the essence of that inner self into some concept of what happens after death. So in that yogic world, if everything is the world egg, and around the earth, there's a shell, kind of like any egg you see, and that shell has a hole in it. And outside of that shell is light, only light. Then what is the sun? The sun isn't what we think of as the sun, which is basically a sphere going, like going around or circling like an object. But the sun is actually a hole in this world egg. So in the earliest of the yoga traditions, the yogis saw this like hole in the world egg, this place where the atmosphere was pierced. And they believed that beyond that was only light. So the earliest forms of yoga were to get the internal self aligned so that at death you could literally ascend and shoot up and through that hole and go into this place where we are beyond the earth and in light. Now, that sounds really interesting to us but think of the imprint it has had on all of our religions and traditions ever since, and not just in the East, but also in the West. This idea of having to ascend at the moment of death to go into a special place where there's light, to go to heaven, to go into a place of salvation, to go into the light. This is language that we've internalized. And as we've internalized this language through this series of death and dying practices and rituals, we have slowly and over time focused more on death and dying as the religious goal and aim, and started to not just pay less attention to form and body and the sacred of what is happening here in life, but to even demonize it, to even call form and body and oscillation something like illusion, or illusion sometimes even meaning evil, illusion sometimes meaning the unreal or the untrue, right? But only the unreal and the untrue as compared to this thing that has to be true, which only can happen after death. But what about life? Why have we been ignoring life in our religions and traditions for so long? And look at the consequences of that, not just for the divine feminine, but for the actual experience of being human for both men and women. Because the patriarchy has not just injured women. Has it injured women? You bet it has. We know it has. But it has also injured men. Men have hurt almost as much as women have hurt, because a man who now has to put all of his focus to be accepted by society into this transcendence, into this like goal-oriented, into this like I have to be right and I have to be goal-oriented and I have to win, well, that takes aside the entire power of the divine masculine. The divine masculine is not this like only goal-oriented quality. The divine masculine is the ability to stand in steadiness in life, so that the weather of movement, so that the oscillation can have a ground to come back to. The steadiness quality of the divine masculine has been co-opted by the patriarchy, which is more of an energy, which is more of a history. How many of our men and women have been put down because they've been told, you're not supposed to feel, you're not supposed to ask questions, you're not supposed to express or love the mother or love the body or love the earth or create. You're only supposed to do what I say if you sit down and stop asking questions. Well, that's not the divine masculine. The divine masculine, as I said, is the ability to hold space. The more the divine masculine, which is a quality that's in all of us, male and female, has nothing to do with gender. The divine masculine holds the space. The divine feminine is the oscillation. The divine masculine is the ground that the tree, that nature grows, that can then blow. It is the ability to hold the basin so that the water can move in it and around it. When the wind blows, the divine masculine has the ability to hold the ground for steadiness for the wind to blow. Coming back to the earth, coming back to the body is what we're doing right now. And some people are calling it collapse. Collapse is not only a scary thing. Yes, it's difficult. Yes, it's challenging because we've gone up so high into this transcendent model. We've built so many ladders that have gone up. We've built so many buildings, and look at those buildings. They've just gotten higher and higher and higher. And where do we put the CEO? The one that is goal-oriented, the one that's going to win no matter what. We put the CEO at the top. The higher up the building is, the further it has to fall. The more we've gone into the transcendence bias and into this principle of shooting up and out of the body at death, the further the reckoning has to come to find the earth and the body again. Now we call that collapse, but what if collapse is just the remembering of soil, the remembering of nature, the coming back from form, from the vibration of form, through thought and emotion, which is really painful to do, really painful to start to peel into these thoughts and emotions, which are the oscillations. But then once we've done some of that, to come into the intuition. So it's like we're reverse engineering this creation principle from the physical into the thought and emotion, into the intuition. And the main difference there is that intuition is information that comes unbidden. Intuition doesn't care whether we listen to it or not. Thought and emotion really cares. Thought says, pay attention to me now. Intuition doesn't. So intuition is a deep knowing that kind of goes, here it is. Listen or don't. That's intuition. It's that deep knowing. And then reverse engineering that all the way into the stillness, the deep stillness that is embodied and of the earth. You have to shout from the rooftop of the top of the tallest building to be heard, but you don't need to shout in the cave. As a matter of fact, the deeper we go into the mother of the earth, the deeper we go into the mineral, and yes, the deeper we go into the dark, the less we have to shout. The more the whisper becomes sacred, the more we start to communicate. So we need both. We need both the ability to come up, especially at the appropriate times, like death, to be able to harness and understand light, but also the ability to come into the dark, even if we have to go through those layers. And it's not the dark that hurts. It's the going through the layers that we've ignored and pushed to the side in our rush to get up there. It's not the dark that's the problem. But that doesn't mean the journey is easy. And so following the divine feminine, following the goddess, is usually not an easy path. When she wakes up within us, when she starts knocking on our door, it's not always like, come on in, this is gonna be great. Usually it's like, okay, we need to figure some things out. Where have you lost your curiosity? Where have you lost your reverence? Where have you stopped listening to the thoughts and the emotions? And where can you get so close to your heart that intuition starts to come through again? So it's not an easy process to get back there, but that is where we're going. And that is, I think, the side of collapse that is generative, necessary, right, and important for our time. And what does that look like when we're in this collapse phase? And what is it that we can do to support this? We can listen to each other and we can listen to ourselves. And this is us going back to the beginning, which is creating a space for story to be shared, creating a space where your grief matters and my grief matters. And if you can express your grief safely and I can express my grief safely, perhaps even in a circle, then maybe we won't need to take that pain out on each other. So the storytelling, the art, the music, once again gets established, as it has been since the beginning of humanity, once again becomes established as the most sacred form of being alive, because it is the expression of the balanced divine masculine and divine feminine, which every single one of us is here to experience, express, and hold in an undivided and totally whole heart.